Welcome back to PostGIS Day 2024, brought to you this year by Crunchy Data, home of professional enterprise Postgres support and makers of Crunchy Bridge, the cloud Postgres service for the discerning nerd. And now Crunchy Data Warehouse, a cloud analytics solution for the discerning data muncher and data cruncher. Our next talk is a popular one. It's one I've been looking forward to. One of the greatest secrets on the internet is how to use PostGIS with ArcGIS. It is the unanswerable question, but we finally have found someone who can answer it for us. Pekka Sarkola has joined us from Finland. Pekka, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. And you? Everything is
doing
fine?
Great.
Okay.
Share your screen. I'm sure everybody is pulling up a chair and waiting with bated breath for you to answer the hardest question on the internet. Can you use PostGIS with ArcGIS? What are the upsides? What are the downsides? Over to you, Pekka.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I will try to understand or make you understand what I have learned when we have done the customer projects with PostGIS and ArcGIS. So first thing is that I work for Gispo, which is a company in Finland and nowadays also in Sweden. And we have founded in 2012, about 25 employees. We consult our customers, we develop the software, we are giving the time and money for the core software development on all FOSS4G softwares. We train our customers and we also support customers to use FOSS4G software. And I'm eager to be also an open source advocate to give better understanding for people how to use the open source technologies. So questions from the customers, what we quite often get is that, can I use PostGIS from my ArcGIS, or is PostGIS compatible with ArcGIS solutions? And you can pick your answer if you want. So you can think about it. Yes, no, it depends, it's complicated. So you can pick your own answer, and I try to, in this presentation, give you an idea what you can do. So roughly speaking, you have two options to choose from. One is that you can use existing PostGIS vector layers as a read-only layers in your ArcGIS application, or you can create the Esri Enterprise Geodatabase to PostGIS. So accessing PostGIS layers from the ArcGIS Desktop or ArcGIS Pro, you have to first create a database connection tool, or use the create database connection tool, and it creates some kind of connection file with all connection parameters, and then you can create query layer to your database. I didn't copy the screenshots to the documentation here. I have a question discussion about copyright issues, so I think you have to go to Google and find the decent screenshots. Also, if you are using ArcGIS Desktop, you have to remember that you have about 12 months to move on, because they will retire the software in March 1st, 2026. So if you use ArcGIS, or you want to use ArcGIS in PostgreSQL, it supports 3 spatial types in PostgreSQL. Esri SD geometry. It's Esri way to handle spatial data in the database columns. And you have to install the Esri library to PostgreSQL server if you want to use this. Then you can use, of course, PostGIS geometry or geography types, but of course you have to install the PostGIS to the PostgreSQL on this case. So more about this Esri SD geometry type. So ArcGIS clients can use it, but you can also access that geometry type with SQL. It is supported in Oracle, PostgreSQL, and SQLite databases, in Windows Server and quite many Linux distributions. Not all, but quite many. I will say the major Linux distributions. And you get about 90 SQL functions when you use these. Construction functions like STS-Centroid, returning the central point of the polygon or line or point, accessors, area, number points, relational functions like contains or intersects, or making a geometric operation like boundary or intersection. I think PostGIS has over 300 plus SQL functions to manipulate the geospatial data, so it's like a subset of the PostGIS SQL functions, but quite nice, I think so. When you create the Esri SD geometry spatial type to the PostgreSQL, you use a tool from the Esri software, and you have to understand that it creates a one login role to database, creates a schema, and then it stores some kind of metadata tables and views to database. And you have to have a decent license or standard or advanced license of software, Esri software, to do this. And to understand that the SD geometry adds some features or some tables and views to database, so don't drop those tables or the views from the database, because then your system is not working anymore. So about query layer, the easiest way to handle PostGIS database layers in the ArcGIS desktop application. So it's basically SQL queries stored in maps in ArcGIS projects, and also available on this old ArcGIS desktop applications. Use case, what they mention in the documentation is that if you don't have access to create views in database, so then you can use these query layers. Of course, easiest way is to store the SQL queries as a views in the database and then access those. But if you don't have access, then you can use those query layers. Query layers are read-only access to database, so you can't write it back. But you can edit the query layer if you share it as a web feature layer to ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise Portal. And this made me confusing up a little bit that you can't edit the data query layer in the desktop application, but then you can use some kind of server and edit the data sets. That's their choice of the implementation, I think so. Supported versions. Whenever you install the software, you have to understand what software versions are supported, especially in ArcGIS world. So nowadays they support quite recent versions of PostgreSQL from 13 to 15 versions. So the PostgreSQL version 16 and the newest one, the 17, is not yet supported, but I think they will go a little bit like 1 year behind the rest of the world or something like that. What about the cloud environment? They support some of those PostgreSQL implementations. And when they say support, it doesn't mean it doesn't work in others, but that's what they support. So you can ask questions and estimate that it will work, and their support service will respond to your questions. Only challenge here is that Esri SD geometry data type is not supported. So if you have current implementation in your on-premises solution or servers, and then you want to move that to the cloud environment, then you have to change your spatial type from Esri SD geometry to PostGIS geometry or geographic. So you have to just know to do this. Then about the Enterprise Geodatabase. So Enterprise Geodatabase. Geodatabase is the native and primary data format of ArcGIS software. That's what they natively do, and that's what they support. And any other data sets are like my word, second version of the GIS data. So geodatabase that's what ArcGIS software like to use, and they support that most. There's multiple types of geodatabases, but the major three, the most used nowadays is the file geodatabase, which is a folder with files, and that's like a single use usage. Then they have a mobile geodatabase, which is a single SQLite file, and as mentioned, it's developed for the mobile usage in the mobile phones or tablets. And then you have Enterprise Geodatabase, which means that you store the geospatial data to the relational database system. And you can use Oracle, PostgreSQL, SQL Server, IBM DB2, and there's a lot of different kind of databases which you can use. So this is always, it seems to be that the implementation is similar in different kind of relational databases, but there's differences. But so I have concentrated here only in the PostgreSQL implementation. So creating the Enterprise Geodatabase in PostgreSQL, you have to run a geoprocessing tool or Python script from ArcGIS client. And that's like easy thing to do, but you have to obtain ArcGIS server key cause files. So you have to have a necessary license file to do this. So that's maybe a challenge in first implementation. Enterprise Geodatabase in PostgreSQL. So geodatabase is very, how do you say, complicated and very, well, it's a developed it 20 years plus, so there's a lot of things to do. So it's a collection of tables, views, stored procedures, and functions, as usually in the databases. And user data is collection of feature classes and non-spatial tables. And feature class is a table with at least primary key, which is object ID column, as they call it, and one spatial data column. And as always in Esri world, you can have only one spatial data column in your datasets. And then there's another thing, which is a datasets. And that's the complex geospatial data layers, like networks, topologies, terrain, raster, and etc. And those dataset types are a combination of the feature class table or tables and other tables. So as mentioned in the BG routing, it's similar than the networks in the Enterprise Geodatabase, but as BG routing, there's multiple different kind of layers when you create a graph and so on. Geodatabase system tables are GDB or SD prefix tables in the SD schema. But as they mention, don't touch those until you use ArcGIS software or SDK. Viewing with the SQL is okay. Dataset system tables are So geodatabase can have at least 15 different kind of dataset types. And there's each dataset type has several tables. They have documented that quite well in the documentation, but do not alter these tables using SQL. So you have a challenge that don't touch on those few tables what they have there. But sometimes if you make an export or you want to use that from some other tools, maybe you can view those or create a copy or something like that, but don't alter the without the Esri software. Then some mentions about when we have created the systems out of the Enterprise Geodatabase. There's a Geodatabase archive, which is like way to archive the data when you edit it. There's a new table from feature class table _H, which is uppercase, which make me think about that there is some worries because PostgreSQL usually used lower cases. And there's a new columns to handle those archive information. Geodatabase has also versioning. So there is a traditional versioning where you have two tables for adds and updates and deletes. And if you want to export the data, you have to think about how to manage those versioning tables. And there's also branch versioning, which is a little bit a newer thing. And there's 6 columns in the feature class tables, which you have to think about to do it. Performance tables is something that I don't really understand, but there are temporary key set and log file tables which are created to boost performance. It's interesting. I don't know how this will boost and why the PostgreSQL isn't fast enough. Maybe this is a reasoning to have an enterprise database also within other databases, so you need to have this kind of performance tables. So, conclusions. Can I use PostGIS from my ArcGIS software, or is PostGIS compatible with ArcGIS solutions? So the first answer may be yes. You can access PostGIS tables as a read-only layers to ArcGIS. Or you can create a Esri Enterprise Geodatabase to PostgreSQL. So somebody can say that yes, it's compatible. But you can say also no, because you can have only read-only connections to PostGIS spatial tables. And we always like to have read and write on the databases, right? Enterprise Geodatabase can be maintained and edited only with the Esri software, which is maybe a limitation. And there's also other limitations that you can have only one spatial column per table. No columns with user-defined types. Maybe that's not a bigger limitation, but some use cases I have found that this has been problematic. It depends. So this is my favorite answer to any technical solution, because it's not what are you planning to do and why? That's usually my first question. If you want to use PostgreSQL with the Esri software, why? What is your enterprise GIS architecture and strategy? Some drivers from the customers, when they have make a choice, they want to cost savings. They want to move from commercial relational databases to PostgreSQL. You can save some money on the license costs. Freedom to act. You want to do something with your databases. You want to move them or duplicate it or expand or making an internet web access or something like that. One of the use cases was that when we create an open data APIs from existing spatial databases, customer had a ArcSD on Oracle, and then we use foreign data wrapper from PostgreSQL to copy the data from internal databases to external or databases, PostgreSQL databases, and then we created GeoServer with GeoServer WFS and WMS services to their customers. So that was one of the cases where we expand the data from or export the data to the outside world. It's complicated. Basically, it's not a technical challenge to using PostGIS with ArcGIS. It's more like business problem than technical challenge. What is your key driver to do this? One question is when I'm asking to do this is a database model a data or software? Usually data ownership is by the user, but how about the database model? Is it data or software? Database model is defined by SQL, and database view is stored to SQL queries. If you copy those and using other way around, is it data or software? It's complicated. You create the enterprise-wide geospatial database with PostGIS and maintain it various closed and open source software. Something goes wrong sooner or later, right? Who will take the responsibility? Well, you always. No, not closed software vendors. You have to check your software license agreement. Open source community, as we are. Software as this, we deliver software as it is. So system integrator, maybe, well, it depends if they will take any kind of responsibility of the problems. Some final notes. Mixed use of closed and open source software is just okay. You have to know what you are doing. Be the master, not the slave. Enterprise GIS with open source software is possible. Transformation should be made in small steps. You're not alone. Everybody is using open source software. And every GIS, every modern GIS user is using already FOSS4G software because all the GIS software have FOSS4G functions or capabilities inside their source. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pekka. Lots and lots of questions. I imagine we'll be able to cover a couple of them here before we run out of time, and the rest we can handle using the Q&A tool. Everyone who has more questions, please use the Q&A tool. I'm going to jump in. Sorry, I go first because I feel like a really common use case or reason for having a hybrid system is that the operational management of the data is handled by folks who are used to the ArcGIS tooling. So then you end up naturally with like, okay, people with ArcGIS on the desktop and they've got an enterprise geodatabase running on the server. But then the enterprise wants to go and take that data in the server and attach it to other things. So you want to like put a GeoServer on top and then read from that live production data. Is that like how fraught is setting up that kind of a hybrid system?
Well, one of the customers says that the database is what we are interested on it. We are not interested about the application which are maintaining and editing the database.
Right.
Whatever it is, but the database is the most important. You have to be in the database. It have to be open that we can connect with different kind of tools there, SQL, GeoGIS, GeoServer, ArcGIS, maybe MapInfo, I don't know, and then you can access the data. So the most important thing is that we have an open database where we can store the information. That's it.
Yeah. And that seems like that's the real rub when you get into trying to use the Esri tools for production work is that they impose all this extra structure on the database, which makes database people climb the walls.
Yeah.
Well, that's also my second question. So I'm gonna go up to the top and get the first one off the Q&A. Which may not have an answer to. Have you configured PostGIS tables to work in ArcGIS Pro without ArcGIS key codes from ArcGIS Enterprise?
Yes. Yes. If you, yeah, because you need those key codes for the enterprise geodatabase,
Right.
not PostGIS database. If you have a PostGIS database, then you can access that with the query layer, because it's like SQL query. So
Yeah.
you don't need those.
Yeah.
But then yeah, that's it.
How do you handle data updates to your unversioned database feature classes, the archived geodatabase feature classes? Do you use the append geoprocessing tool, or can you use SQL to do it? Which is kind of one of my questions as well. Like there
No, that's
are,
goes very deep into the enterprise geodatabase.
yeah.
Yeah, you can use, I think you can use SQL, but you have to know what you do. And then it's suddenly, I don't recommend.
And I've been of the impression, but I'd like to have it verified that a lot of the things that you, like the management things that you might be told in the documents to use ArcGIS user interface for can also be done using PLPGSQL functions that are shipped in the
I,
ESD
you
schema.
need, as they mentioned,
Yeah.
to maintain the enterprise geodatabase, you need to have ArcGIS desktop application or SDK.
Oh, okay.
SDK means that you have ESRI software inside your application. So
Oh, so it's not
maybe
database.
I
Yeah. So it's
re-saying
still a
that no
client.
SQL
Yeah,
SDK.
it's still a client function, either the
Yes,
ArcGIS
it is
client or
still.
the custom client with the SDK.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Um, Time for a couple more. Are there any known ways to convert between PostGIS's implementation of geometry and Esri's ST geometry?
Well, you can use PostGIS geometry inside the enterprise geodatabase,
Yeah,
and that's it. But if you, yeah, but then if you start to edit PostGIS geometry, which is based, and there's an enterprise geodatabase on top of that,
right.
um,
That's
don't
dangerous.
don't. I mean,
Yeah. I would add from like a computer sort of like strict data format translation point of view, you can convert PostGIS geometries into well-known binary, and I assume you can read and write well-known binary from the Esri ST geometry. So that
yeah,
would be an inside the database path for doing a
yeah, but
configuration.
they haven't. I haven't seen that they have published SD geometry file format. So then, if you reverse engineering that and trying to touch that, well,
Yeah.
not in production, I will say.
Okay. Time for one more. That was making sense. Oh, that's fun. Can ArcGIS show arcs in the query layer from PostGIS? So like circular strings, curved polygons.
Um, Let me think. Probably not, because they are supporting only the limited, because those are they are not ISO OGC.
Well, they're in the recent specs of ISO and
Yeah,
OGC, but
yeah,
not the older
but
ones.
yeah, I haven't tested, and I don't
Unknown.
have access to
Unknown.
everything.
Try it yourself and find out.
Yeah,
All right.
and tell
Thank you
us.
so much for your time, Pekka, and for bringing this this topic to us.